won't find a problem. But she says she also tries to calm herself down by reminding herself how much her babies are kicking. She says they're really active.
And doctors, what can you do for these women?
Several doctors who we spoke with said they're in a really tough spot because there isn't much they can do. There's no vaccine for Zika. There's no cure. There's no clear way to reverse any birth defects that might be linked to it. So Colombia is in this really weird situation where officials are preparing for this possible major public health crisis that they really don't know much about.
Narit, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Renee.
That's NPR Global Health Correspondent Narit Eisenman speaking to us from Cucuta, Colombia.
People who round up and steal cattle rustlers, have long been reviled, but they've also been part of Texas mythology ever since there have been cattle on the range. Well, now, the downturn in oil prices is giving rise to a new kind of criminal, oil rustlers. Mose Buchel from member station KUT takes us to South Texas.
Mike Peters drives through the brush country of LaSalle County, touring the oil fields. As he steers his pickup, he says, "Let's play cop for a little while." Peters was on the San Antonio police force for more than 30 years, so he knows how to play cop.
You noticed the truck that was here when we pulled out?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the truck. It's not one of ours.
So you're wondering what they're up to? After Peters retired, he became head of security for the drilling company Lewis Energy. The truck he was following seemed to be trying to enter oil well sites.
More than likely, it's purely legitimate, but if you don't question when you see something like that, you never catch anybody.
These days, he's trying to catch oil thieves. It's become a big problem. He says people are sneaking into well sites and stealing crude oil. We'll get into how that works in a minute. But first, why? Why would anyone want to steal oil when prices are so low? For some answers, let's take a detour to the nearby city of Cotulla. In the town plaza, cars line up for an outdoor food pantry. Volunteers say the need is great. Since the oil downturn, many people are out of work. Ismael Tejas put it this way.
Gas goes up, the oil field goes up. And the gas goes down, and then you go back to the house.
Tejas used to work the oil fields. He's been unemployed now for a couple of years. He says these days people are getting creative to make ends meet.
Like cut grass, lawnmowers, weed eating.
Odd construction jobs, ranch work, maybe even stealing.
It's all about the money. It's always about the green dollar.
That's LaSalle County Sheriff Miguel Rodriguez. Since the downturn, he's investigated all sorts of oil field thefts. Stolen generators, stolen truck batteries, and yes, stolen oil. He says these crimes seem to be on the rise.
You know, you got people that they're hard to work, and then for some reason they get terminated, they get fired, and then they know the system, so they know when they can go to the location where they know there's the oil, and they sell it in the black market.
This eerie noise is the wind hitting the side of an empty tanker truck. It was used in an alleged oil heist last fall. Now it's in a police impound lot in Cotulla. If you know how to use a truck like this, it's easy to connect to an oil storage tank, grab some crude. The next step is laundering it. Lewis Energy's Mike Peters says one way people do that is partner with the owner of an oil well that isn't producing.
And all of a sudden it becomes what we call a miracle well. It will all of a sudden start producing 25, 50 barrels a day, but before it didn't produce anything.
Another way is to claim the oil is salvaged, skimmed from the wastewater that's a byproduct of oil production. So how big a problem is oil theft?
The standard answer to that, which comes out of the Energy Security Council, is that it is probably between 1 to 3% of all the oil produced in Texas.
That could be billions of dollars. And that's why oil companies in Texas are lobbying for higher penalties against thieves. Some want to fund more police just to patrol the oil fields. Remember that suspicious-looking guy at the beginning of the story? He turned out to be a hunter. But Mike Peters says he's glad he checked, just to be on the safe side. For NPR News, I'm Mose Buchel in Austin.
You're listening to Morning Edition on WNYC. The note to cell folks tried using apps to stop sugar cravings. Well, that did not work. Now they want to hear your stories. WNYC's note to self is coming up in about 10 minutes. Skies will be turning partly to mostly sunny later today, getting up into the lower 40s. Then tonight will be mostly clear and cold with overnight lows near 28. And then for tomorrow, Thursday, sunny with a high near 35. Right now, it's mostly cloudy in New York City, 37 degrees in Central Park. Feels like 32 with the wind. This is WNYC coming up on 7:42.
WNYC is supported by TechServe, offering backup solutions and support that helps protect computer files, and offering data recovery for lost documents or damaged hardware. More info at techserve.com. Leadership support for digital innovation at WNYC is provided by the Jerome L. Green Foundation.
At WNYC, we love NPR News as much as you do. That's why we bring it to you every day.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron is in Brussels today trying to secure a deal on European Union reforms, ones he wants to see before the British vote on whether to join the EU. As Larry Miller reports from London, a vote is possible by June.
Cameron's demand for a curb on British welfare benefits for new migrants from other EU countries is reportedly being strongly opposed by some East European leaders. And while Downing Street says the deal has the widespread support of European lawmakers, the president of the EU Parliament warns backing for any deal cannot be guaranteed.
The nation's energy secretary is calling for new regulations on the natural gas industry after that major leak in Southern California. It was temporarily capped last week, nearly 4 months after it began. The leak forced thousands of residents from their homes in the Los Angeles area, and California Congressman Brad Sherman says Southern California Gas should foot the bill.
Costs of this should not be passed through to ratepayers around the Southland. The costs of dealing with this should not find their way into gas bills around Los Angeles.
Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz says new gas storage regulations are needed. That well that ruptured is more than 60 years old. It's the largest natural gas storage facility in the western U.S. I'm Dave Mattingly in Washington.
And this is WNYC in New York at 7:44. Good morning. I'm Satirius Johnson. Governor Christie has renewed his pitch to lawmakers to overhaul the state's public pension system. Christie laid out a $34.8 billion spending plan proposal, including nearly $2 billion for the pension, just over half of what he and lawmakers agreed to 5 years ago. His plan does not address state transportation trust fund problems. Democratic legislative leaders aren't ruling out working with the governor, but they're also not embracing the reforms he put forward in his budget address. Assembly Speaker Vincent Prieto says Democrats have been around all along to work together. The Port Authority is seeking to keep so far confidential and redacted documents on the George Washington Bridge lane closure case from being released by a court. NJ.com reports the state's brief was filed late yesterday after news outlets sought the documents' release. The Port Authority says the documents include information on an unrelated matter. And governors from 17 states, including New York, are committing to work together to seek cleaner energy and transportation and to build a better electrical grid. The bipartisan group announced yesterday what it's calling the Governor's Accord for a New Energy Future. The governors intend to work together on energy planning and policies. To be partly to mostly sunny today, getting up to around 43 degrees. Then tonight remains mostly clear. It will be cold with overnight lows dipping down to about 28. And then tomorrow, Thursday, sunny with highs in the mid-30s. Right now, it's mostly cloudy in New York City, 37 degrees in Central Park. Feels like 32 with the wind. It's 32 and cloudy in Bridgewater. This is WNYC at 7:45.
Molly Ringwald has been on stage since the age of 3, but not her children.
My kids are not allowed to be professional as kids.
That doesn't mean they didn't want to.
For a while, it was a daily battle. Well, why can't I? Why was it okay for you and not for me?
This is Alec Baldwin. This week on Here's the Thing, the star of Pretty in Pink and The Breakfast Club, author, actress, and singer Molly Ringwald. Take a listen at here'sthething.org.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Renee Montaigne.
And I'm David Green. When you're a journalist, your friends often ask you about the news, and the question I get a lot, are Americans really going to be able to vacation freely in Cuba? Well, it may be one step closer. In Havana yesterday, the U.S. and Cuba signed an agreement to allow commercial air travel between the two countries for the first time in decades. Several U.S. carriers have lined up to get permission to fly to Cuba. One is JetBlue, whose senior vice president for airline planning is a man named Scott Lawrence. Scott, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So I want to hear about these flights to Cuba. They could begin as soon as this fall, and I'm wondering why this is a priority for JetBlue.
We're a big carrier in the region, It's a big part of our network. And, you know, we've got a big hole. If you look at the map, we're like a grocery store that doesn't sell milk, not serving Cuba. So it really rounds out our ability to serve the Caribbean.
Just so our listeners understand it, Scott, I mean, when I did a flight as a journalist to Cuba, I took a charter flight. I mean, I had to go through a charter company. It was actually an American Airlines plane, apologies, with an American Airlines crew, but it was done through a charter company. Is that essentially what you do at JetBlue? You fly your planes there, you have crews going, but actually money is exchanged through a charter company?
That's correct. We have a very similar process to what you experienced, obviously a little bit better. But we work with business partners who are committed to work in Cuba. We contract with them to provide the airplane and the crew, and they are responsible for sales and things like document checks and things like that.
But this will be more than a cosmetic change. I mean, if you actually have scheduled flights that you're able to run, it'll be more profitable for the airline. You'll be flying more flights there, so forth.
Yes. Now, there are some restrictions on the categories of Americans that can visit Cuba. They have to be fit into one of 12 categories. But we're going to be responsible for things like the pricing and looking to compete on service, and it's something we're really excited about.
You mentioned those travel restrictions that will still be in place. Does that make things a little scary and unpredictable, like the demand that you might have in a different new destination, might not be there?
Absolutely. Data is the biggest issue, and we don't have data for Cuba, and data is our safety blanket. We don't make a lot of decisions without analyzing them to that. With Cuba, with the exception going back to 1959, where the data is a little squirrely.
a little aged.
Yes, it is. We just don't have a good angle on what customers are going to do in terms of these 12 restrictions. We think there's a lot of excitement for Cuba. We think we're going to see a lot of people wanting to go, and obviously we know that there's a market there for people visiting their friends and relatives. But it is a bit of an unknown, and we're going to have to go forward without that safety blanket.
As I gather, there's like a bidding war going on among airlines to try and grab these routes. Are you there in some room at the Department of Transportation with senior vice presidents from other airlines, or does this take place all like over email?
It'd be like a cage match if that happened. It's definitely a competitive process. So we go to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Each of us submits a bid or a business case as to how we'll better serve the traveling public. The department will take each of these competitive bids, and we will all get on our hind legs and punch holes in each other's logic. The department then takes a period of time, usually between about 90 and 180 days, we're then obliged to begin operating.
All right, we've been speaking to Scott Lawrence. He is the Senior Vice President for Airline Planning at JetBlue, one of the airlines that is trying to get flights approved to fly from the United States to Cuba. Scott, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You're listening to Morning Edition on WNYC. Stay tuned now for WNYC's Note to Self. It's just ahead. And later on the program, China has deployed anti-aircraft missiles on one of the disputed islands it controls in the South China Sea. The move is increasing tensions over the area, which is claimed by 5 other nations as well. Then a deeply divided European Union is trying to figure out how to best manage the continuing inflow of people seeking asylum. Some Greeks fear their country could become a giant detention camp. And the new analysis of the relationship between college football, binge drinking, and sexual violence on campus finds reports of rape increased dramatically on college football home game days. In the forecast for today, it's going to be partly to mostly sunny, getting up into the lower 40s, and then tonight will be clear, mostly clear and cold, with overnight lows in the upper 20s. Tomorrow, Thursday, sunny with highs in the mid-30s. And then for Friday, the outlook for Friday, sunny in the morning, becoming mostly cloudy later in the day with highs in the upper 30s. Looking forward to the weekend, partly sunny and milder for Saturday with highs in the lower 50s. Looks like Sunday will be mostly sunny, getting up to about 48. Right now, it's mostly cloudy in New York City. 37 degrees in Central Park. Feels like 32 with the breeze. In the Bronx right now, it's 36 degrees. The wind chill there is 31. And in New Brunswick, we've got cloudy skies, 34 degrees there. This is WNYC and WNYC.org. Time right now is 7:51.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Angie's List, For 20 years, Angie's List has striven to provide consumers with transparency about local services. Online reviews and hiring tools are at angieslist.com. And Chipotle, committed to serving responsibly sourced ingredients prepared with classic cooking techniques like hand-mashed guacamole, slow-braised carnitas, and tomatillo red chili salsa. Chipotle.
It's Note to Self, the tech show about being human. I'm Manoush Samarodi. And this week, how we control ourselves and our bodies, and what technology is promising to do to help us. A few weeks back, Jen Poyant, the executive producer of this show, got to talking about sugar detoxes with me and Dan Pashman. He's the host of the podcast, The Sporkful.
All right, you guys ready for this?
Yeah, very ready.
All right.
So Dan sits really near us at WNYC Studios, and he is the colleague you want to have. He's always bringing in delicious things to taste, and he has a big selection of condiments that he doesn't mind you borrowing. I made a show with Dan last year, actually, and he is, you remember that one, he's a complete force of nature.
But then when I get into my zone, you better look out.
All three of us wanted to eat less sugar per the USDA's new recommendations, which now say we should be having no more than 12 teaspoons a day, or 10% of our daily calories. But I would never do that.
Gummies.
Right.
I know.
You won't be able to eat the gummy.
I know. I love that word. Also, the three of us aren't getting any younger, so eating less sugar seemed like a mature thing to do. It also seemed, frankly, terrifying.